Hello friends, I'm Jade and welcome back to episode 2 of Training the Commander. In this segment we will be diving into the role of the commander and what it means to be one. Now I know this approach may seem a bit over the top since what we're trying to accomplish isn't necessary for most other games. However, in Guild Wars 2's current state, we find a quite complex world filled with loads of content that offers little to no tutorials for new players. This is a challenge that the game has faced for a long time, and is what I personally believe is a major reason that there is a disconnect between the new player and the content. This is why we have structured Wipe to act as a knowledge and training resource to help arm the veteran and upcoming community with the proper mentality and resources to bridge that gap and support longevity in the raid community. Since we primarily train statics in Wipe, these guides will be more tailored for that purpose. However, most if not all of these techniques and information are just as relevant to a pug training group, so without further ado, let's get started. So when starting your first raid training group or your own static, that can be a very exciting endeavour that allows you to make some meaningful connections with people. It is also an opportunity to create a large impact on someone's gaming experience by opening a door for them to new content that is otherwise heavily gatekept by the community. So as a commander, you play a very important role in your group. You aren't just there to make some callouts and explain a few mechanics. Here at Wipe, we believe the role of the commander extends far beyond that. You are the essential glue that holds the group together. You are the teacher, the decision maker, the conflict mitigator, and lastly, the motivator. So let's dive deeper into what that means. So let's start out with the teacher. I often say that it's easy to find someone who can explain the mechanics of an encounter and lead it when everything goes right, but it's much more difficult to find someone who can lead an encounter when everything goes wrong. Have you ever been in a situation where you died randomly and had absolutely no idea why? As a commander, your job is to identify what's going wrong immediately and facilitate the answer along with a strategy to deal with that issue in the following attempt. One of the worst things you can do as a commander is to allow an individual to continually fail a mechanic and not address it immediately. This will usually result in trainees developing bad habits, existing in a constant state of confusion, or worse, they begin to blame themselves for holding the group back, which fails our first objective, since they no longer feel like they are in a comfortable learning environment. Let's take a look at the decision maker. So this role should seem very obvious. You are the commander, you're in charge of the playbook, and ultimately you will have the last say on most matters pertaining to raids. Although there are many situations where a democratic leadership approach may be suitable, that will most often be seen in experienced groups that already are very self-sufficient and need little to no direction at all in order to complete their objective. In a training environment, it is important to realize that everyone will be looking to you for direction and guidance whenever needed. Without a clear leader stepping up to the plate, chaos will most likely ensue, since everyone will most likely have varying opinions of what the best approach to take, and in most cases the group will fall apart. That is why your role as the decision maker is key to maintaining a unified effort focused on whatever goal you and your team have laid out. Eventually, if you have done your role effectively, then you'll be able to start sharing the decision-making process with the group, which will in turn help build individual value. We created a Wipe raid etiquette guide to help outline the importance of allowing the training commander to maintain solid control over the squad compositions, missions, and execution strategies. Now, I will add that this role should not be abused, and it should be very clear that the ability to tell someone to do something and have them carry out that action is derived from respect, and must be first earned and then strengthened and maintained over time. Next up is the conflict mitigator. This is a big one, and one of the most difficult roles to step into as a commander by far. We go back to the Wipe Objective 1, maintain a fun, positive learning environment. As a training commander, you are constantly looking out for potential conflicts arising amongst your trainees. You obviously want your static to have the best chance at staying together as long as possible, and conflict is one of the biggest threats to this objective. Most often, this conflict will present itself in a disagreement between a few individuals, or an individual exhibiting a behaviour that may be making the group uncomfortable or feeling distracted. If left too long, these issues will quickly grow out of control to a point where serious damage is done, and the chance of maintaining the static or the raid group will be close to impossible to fix. Try to be as proactive as you can in these scenarios and be sure to address them as soon as you see them come up. When training your static, you should always be sure to list what types of behaviors will not be tolerated so that everyone is on the same page going forward. It will be easier to deal with should a situation develop down the line. A couple scenarios that I can provide would be a situation where a trainee is struggling with mechanics or are doing very low DPS and another trainee begins to talk down on them and ridicule their performance. This is simply not okay in most groups because it promotes poor behavior and damages the individual's user experience and can bring the overall morale of the group down. We don't want trainees being pressured to succeed in mechanic only because they're afraid that they'll be judged or berated. Remember, mistakes are an opportunity to learn and we want to encourage trainees to get better in a positive manner. Another scenario is one you will see quite often in pug groups. Either you'll have someone toxic who joins the group, or somebody already in your group that may start picking on this performance of a pug. Both of these situations are areas of conflicts that you as a commander should deal with before it escalates out of control. I will most often explain to the individual what the group's objective is, and then let him know that this type of behavior they're exhibiting will not be tolerated, and they will be removed from the group should this behavior continue. Once friction starts to happen between two or more individuals, it can become quite distracting and it puts the group in an uncomfortable situation. Alright, lastly, the motivator. This is the role that I will most often see commanders forget about, or not truly understand the value. We recommend all our training sessions run for 2 hours. That can go by quickly or feel like the longest 2 hours of your life, and it all revolves around this role. Have you ever heard the term time flies by when you're having fun? Well, that applies directly to raids. You may have been a part of a raid group that was full of people that were all joking around with each other and having the time of their lives. Maybe you might have noticed that you lost track of time because you were so invested in the activity. You also may have experienced a group that had very low interaction and at the time seemed to drag on forever. As a commander, your job is to keep everyone focused on the task at hand. You're already challenged with content that exhibits very repetitive mechanics that most new people will easily become distracted and end up messing up as a result. Promoting team synergy is one of the pillars that Wipe was built on. So I always like to encourage lots of group interaction so that everyone keeps each other on their toes. You can look for opportunities to build more communication in your group by giving individuals with special roles the responsibility of giving certain callouts. Sometimes I call this role the entertainer, because generating a bit of laughter can be infectious. At the end of the day, if your trainees leave smiling and happy because they had a genuine good time, then it won't matter one bit to them if you didn't get the kill that session. Another very important practice that I believe is key to growing strong raiders is effectively using positive feedback. Oftentimes, we find it so easy to point out what people do wrong, but we sometimes forget to recognize when people do something right. I'm pretty sure that everyone likes a pat on the back every now and then. Letting someone know when they have done something well affirms a standard that they can hold themselves to. Don't be afraid to point out something that someone is doing wrong, but always be sure to follow it up with something that will positively reinforce their efforts. For instance, I might have noticed that someone isn't paying attention to a certain mechanic, but they are doing some really good DPS. I might say something along the lines of, "Hey Jade, I can tell you spend a great deal of time on your damage rotation. That's looking really good. But you have to make sure to look out for this mechanic that occurs at this time, otherwise missing it can result in failure of the encounter, okay?" Then I always am sure to recognize them when they succeed that mechanic. So these are the 4 corners of what a commander is made up of, or a leader in general. It is important that you exercise all of these in tandem so that your group feels confident in you and your ability to lead them through any of the content. I encourage you to work on improving all 4 of these areas so that you can be the most effective commander for your group. If you fall into these roles well, I promise that you will see more trainees returning to your sessions and more mechanic retention in the group. People will naturally gravitate to strong leadership. So if donning the commander tag is what you wish to do, then I hope this can be the first step in providing substance beneath the tag. Thank you for tuning in for this episode, and as always, if you are enjoying the guides, go ahead and subscribe and tell me what challenges you have faced or are facing as a commander. I'll see you in the next segment, where we will discuss the different learning styles and how you can easily adapt to them in your trainings. See you in the next one.